Hi everybody, this is your government update for May 26th. It is Tuesday. Yesterday was Memorial Day, so it was a 3-day weekend, so I did not bother you with assignments and stuff yesterday, but today. So it's a short week. You only have one assignment. We are talking about the Supreme Court. Hopefully that'll be a little bit interesting, and you guys will get a good understanding of what the Supreme Court is. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will begin on Google Classroom here. So as always, we have our calendar, we have our slides, which we're going to start in, and then we have our assignment. I'm going to pop over to the slides where we are going to begin for slide number, we're on slide number 13, and this is our calendar. So no school yesterday, obviously. Ooh, I can't. No, present. I totally forgot I could do this. All right, here we are. So we do have kind of a lot of notes, which kind of sucks, but then you only have one assignment that goes with it, and we are talking about the Supreme Court. So the first thing we want to do on page 64 in our notebook here, we're going to title this State and Federal Court. And we are going to be copying this all down, which I'll read to you. So there's a state court and there's a federal court. There's some major differences. We'll begin with the federal court, which is on this side. Article 3 of the Constitution invests the judicial power of the United States in the federal court system. Article 3, Section 1 specifically creates the U.S. Supreme Court and gives Congress the authority to create the lower federal courts. Congress has used the power to establish the 13 U.S. Courts of Appeals, the 94 U.S. District Courts, and the U.S. Court of Claims, and the U.S. Court of International Trade. U.S. bankruptcy courts handle bankruptcy cases. Magistrate judges handle some of the district court matters. Parties dissatisfied with the decision of the U.S. Court and the Court of Claims and or the Court of International Trade may appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals. A party, I guess I can't move this thing. So a party may ask the U.S. Supreme Court to review the decision of the U.S. Court of Appeals, but the U.S. is usually under no obligation to do so. I'm not going to lie, there's a little thing covering that last sentence, so I can't read it to you. So, U.S. court system on this side. The Constitution and the laws of each state establish the state's courts. The court is the last resort, often known as the Supreme Court. It is usually the highest court, and some states also have an intermediate court of appeals. Below these appeals courts are the state trial courts, some referred to the circuit or district court. States also usually have courts that handle specific legal matters. Example, probate court, wills and estates, juvenile court, family court, etc. Parties dissatisfied with the decision of the trial court may make their case in the immediate court of appeals. Parties have an option to ask the highest state courts to hear the case, and only certain cases are eligible for review by the U.S. Supreme Court. So we are still on page 64, if it will fit. So how judges are selected in the federal court system. The Constitution states that the federal judges are to be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. They hold office during good behavior, typically for life. Though congressional impeachment proceedings, federal judges may be removed from office for misbehavior. The state court system, state court judges are selected in a variety of ways. 1 can be elections, 2 can be appointment for a number given in years, 3 appointment for life, and a combination of these methods. So usually when you vote for your local government, there will be a judge on there, and you can vote for your local judge. State and federal court continued. We are going to put this on page 65, so on your next page. So the federal court system. Cases that deal with the constitutionality of a law. Cases involving laws and treaties of the United States. Cases involving ambassadors and public ministers. Disputes between two or more states. Admiralty law, bankruptcy, and habeas corpus issues. The state court system will handle most criminal cases, and probate, which is involving wills and estates. Most contract cases, tort cases, so personal injuries, family law, marriages, divorce, adoptions, things like that. State courts are final arbiters of the state laws and constitution. Their interpretation of federal law or U.S. Constitution may be appealed by the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court may choose to hear or not hear such cases. So, what is the Supreme Court and how does it work? So, we're going to title it page 66, How Does the Supreme Court Work? So, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the country. It is located in Washington, D.C., the head of the judicial branch of the federal government. It is mostly responsible for deciding if laws violate the Constitution, and it's in session from October until early June or July, which is cool. So they get August, September. They get like a 3-month break. They only work 9 months of the year. They're like a teacher. My little face. So how a case gets to the Supreme Court. Most cases reach the Court of Appeal. An appeal is a request for a higher court to reverse the decision of a lower court. Most appeals come from federal courts. They can come from the state courts if the case deals with federal law. Rarely the court hears a new case, such as one between states. So here's like the little order. It starts in a state trial, court, and then it goes to a state court of appeals, then state Supreme Court. I'm going to assume this says federal court. I have a little thing blocking it, and then a federal court of appeals down here. And then we have, represents the Supreme Court. So there's stages. You don't just go to jail for murder and then go to the Supreme Court. There's a million steps, and that's why like death row cases, like it takes like 25 years to like get someone put to death, because they have a right to so many appeals and so on and so forth to get up to hopefully, get their case heard. So, page 66. So these are reasons why why we have Supreme Court cases. One, dissatisfied parties petition the court for review. So parties may appeal their case to the Supreme Court, petitioning the court to review the decision. So if they don't agree with their decisions, to say like I murdered someone and I'm innocent and they find me guilty, I can appeal because I don't believe that that's the right judgment and I deserve to like try against it. 2, the justices will study documents. So justices will examine the petition supporting materials. So when you appeal, you have to make a case explaining why something was wrong with the first case. You can't just be like, no, I'm innocent, that's it. You need to have like evidence that proves that you're innocent, or evidence that proves that whoever determined your guiltiness, so it could be the police or the investigators, that they violated your constitutional right? So an example can be, I was watching like some documentary called How to Make a Murder, or Making of a Murderer. I don't know if you watch it, it's on Netflix, but they sentenced a 16-year-old boy to jail for murder. And the only evidence that they had was his confession, but he wasn't interviewed with a parent. He has noticeably mental deficiencies, so they didn't take that into account. And the police were overly aggressive, promising things that they couldn't give, and like basically tricked him into confessing, and that isn't okay. So that's their case. 3 justices vote. So 4 of the 9 justices have to vote in favor to hear the case. So the Supreme Court gets to decide what cases they want to hear. They go through all their little stacks or whatever, and they say, oh, this one sounds good, this one doesn't. We don't want to hear this one, we want to hear that one. Pretty interesting. They get to do their job how they want. So, page 67. We're going around page 67. So what happens when a case is selected? So say the case has been selected. So the first parties will make their argument. The justices review the briefs, which are written arguments, and hear oral arguments. So they're going to talk, they're going to write, they're going to read. It's a lot of work. In oral arguments, each side usually has 30 minutes to present its case, and the justices typically ask many questions during this time. Justices write opinions. So the justice will vote on the case and write their opinions. The majority opinion shared by more than half the justices becomes the court's decision. Justices who disagree with the majority opinion write dissenting or minority opinion. So for every case, someone will write the majority opinion, which is like the winning opinion, yes or no, and then someone will write the dissenting opinion. So you have both sides of each argument. What were the justices thinking in their decision? 3, the court issues its decision. Justices may change their vote after reading first drafts of the opinions. Once the opinions are completed and all justices have cast a final vote, the court hands down its decision. All cases are heard and decided before summer recess. It can take up to 9 months to decide or to announce a decision. Okay. The Supreme Court every year receives 7,000 to 8,000 requests for review, and typically only grants 70 to 80 for oral arguments. Other requests are granted and decided without an argument. So they get a lot of appeals and a lot of petitions to like hear their case, but ultimately they don't have to give it to them. Page 67, continuing as well. So about the justices, the people who sit on the Supreme Court in their robe, they have robes like that. They're just called justices. But so there are 9 of them. A chief justice who sits in the middle is the head of the judicial branch. That basically just means he usually writes the, his vote is equal, but he kind of like pushes them along. He's the leader of the group. Okay, and then there's 8 associate judges. When a new justice is needed, a president will nominate a candidate and who's already usually a federal judge. The Senate will confirm the nominee. The court can continue deciding cases with less than 9 judges, but if there is a tie, a lower court decision stands. And justices are appointing for life, though they may resign or retire, and they serve on for an average of 16 years. So, all right, this is your only assignment, is Supreme Court case research, and I'm gonna exit out of, how do I exit out of this? Okay, there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and open it. So, all right, so directions. You are going to complete the research organizer on the second page of this document with an internet search about one of the Supreme Court cases listed below. So I have provided a list of Supreme Court cases here. All you have to do is choose one to research, and these ones are all specifically related to like students, so things that students should need. So on this side, I have the case name and the year, and then I have basically the topic. So Tinker versus Des Moines of Independent School District, freedom of speech at school. That one's pretty interesting, Tinker. Ingram versus Wright, which is school discipline. I think that one is like, can you spank children at school? Santa Fe Independent School District versus Jane Doe, so school prayer. That talks about like if religion is allowed in school. Kent versus United States, juveniles and serious crimes. That one talks about if juveniles should be tried as adult at a degree of crime. Hazelwood District versus Kohlmeyer, student journalism and the First Amendment. So that talks about if schools are able to censor school newspapers. Verona School versus Acton, which is referring to student athletes and drug testing. West-wide community school versus emergent, so that deals with like student clubs and religion, I believe. Like you can't tell like a group of Christian students or Muslim students or Hindu students that they can't have a religious club, or if they can. Grutter versus Bollinger, affirmative action in college. So affirmative action, if you haven't heard of it, it's supposed to create an equal playing field for like college admissions. So it says that like each school needs to admit like a certain percentage of minority students versus white students, because we know that it's not always an equal playing field out there. And should we punish people of color for being in communities that maybe don't have as good of a school system, or they don't have as many access to law? It's very interesting. That's pretty cool. And then DeShaney versus Winnebago County Social Services, which is constitutional rights at home. So that has to deal with your parents if they have a right to punish you and things like that. So, or if you have rights against your parents inside your home. So choose one of those, and you're going to complete this research organizer. Just super interesting. So state of the case, or name of the case, brief summary of the case in your own words. What was the final court decision? What is the overall effect of the case decision on the United States society? And how close was the Supreme Court vote? Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. That is your one assignment for the week. So pretty easy, pretty simple. If you know of another Supreme Court case that you want to research, I'm willing to, like, if you want to send me an email or something, like people are super interested in Roe v. Wade or Miranda versus Arizona, or Maricopa County or Arizona, or the Citizens United. There's tons of Supreme Court. There's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of, well, not maybe not hundreds of thousands or hundreds. Anywho, if you have another case that you are super interested in and you would like to research, let me know. I just picked those ones because those ones are regarding to students, and not all of them are always that interesting. So I'm gonna end this here. We have office hours on Wednesday per usual. Let me know if you need anything. I will be available to you. So I love you, and